The second episode of the Nancy Drew Show is called Secret of the Old Morgue. I would classify it as a heist episode. Our heroes need to break into the morgue and steal some evidence before the victim's body is moved. That's the central premise of the episode. I would also say it's a George episode. It focuses primarily on George and Ryan Hudson, who's the victim's husband. So we learn more about why George and Nancy don't like each other. So last year, when they were in high school, people found out about the fact that George is having an affair with Mr. Hudson, who's a married man who's twice her age. He's the same age as Nancy's father, so I'd say he's about twice as old as George. So naturally, when the people in high school heard about this, they went crazy and the rumor mill went wild. And George blamed Nancy. Nancy wasn't spreading rumors, but Nancy didn't stop her friends from spreading rumors. So that's the source of the enmity between George and Nancy. And they sort of come to a bit of a reconciliation here. Nancy spies on George when George is talking to Mr. Hudson. That is George's job. George needs to steal the phone so they can call somebody and create a distraction. But George ends up talking to Ryan about his wife and their relationship, and Nancy spies on them. Nancy can read lips from a distance, so I thought that was a little strange that Nancy can read lips from a distance. I hope this comes up again, and it's not just a weird plot point that gets dropped, because that happened in Hardy Boys Undercover Brothers, where the Hardy Boys can communicate with sign language, thank you very much. They do it in one scene, and then never again. It was really weird how the Hardy Boys apparently are super fantastic with sign language and can communicate silently whenever they want, but they only do it the once. So I hope this is not the same way. I hope Nancy's ability to read lips is something which comes up again. So Nancy gets to spy on them and sees the conversation, and she gets into that big fight with George about what happened in high school. And Nancy kind of redeems herself in George's eyes by not telling the others, by not throwing George under the bus. She just says, George wasn't able to get the phone. She doesn't say, well, George betrayed us because her mission was stealing a phone from her secret boyfriend. So that was basically what happened with Nancy and George. Also with Bess and Ace. Bess and Ace sort of teamed up together to stop the person who's moving the bodies. So they pretended to have car trouble. So the person from the morgue was driving by, stopped the car to help them, change the tire, and fix the things. And unless I'm mistaken, there was some romantic tension between Bess and Lisbeth, who's the woman who was driving the morgue car. I thought it strange that Bess is short for Elizabeth. So Bess and Elizabeth have the same name and some romantic tension together. She later tells Ace, I don't date anyone. I'm not interested in, boys or girls. Which is different, because normally George is the character who kind of gets stereotyped or pegged as someone who's a lesbian. So it's different to see Bess sort of carry that torch for the Nancy Drew series. She sends Elizabeth a text message towards the end of the episode, but I could not read it. It was too tiny. The screen was too tiny. Ace, okay, so he got a text message. He was the second text message that I just straight out couldn't read. So, I guess I need to get a better TV, but he and Bess both had text messages at the end of the episode, which I could not read for the life of me. So Nancy gets arrested at the morgue, and at the police station, she breaks into the police's computer, which is not a smart idea, committing crimes in a police station, but she gets the victim's phone and pictures of the last text messages the victim sent. And the victim sent messages to an unknown number, and Nancy calls that unknown number. She gets interrupted by Nick, because Nancy's having make-out time with Nick, make-out time without all their clothes on. It's not a sex scene. We have two scenes where, that we have characters making out and they're not wearing all their clothes, but no sex scenes. Sort of like, the build-up to sex scenes, I suppose you would call them. But apparently the victim called Nick right before she died. Dun dun dun. That was the end of episode cliffhanger. So Nancy breaks into the morgue. She can't just break into the morgue using her lock-picking kit because they have a key card system now. I thought that was cute. That was neat to have a technology upgrade. So the morgue was really creepy. It really built into the scary part of the episode where, Nancy had to check out every single dead body, and she put a syringe in the victim's ear to pull out blood, which was super gross, and then the body started breathing, and then it disappeared. Creepiness. So that the episode also had like a pool of blood showing up everywhere, and George apparently kicked over a bucket of seawater, which turned into blood, indicating that George is going to die this year. So Nancy also saw the victim, Dead Lucy's body scream. So Dead Lucy apparently haunts the morgue. Nancy steals the evidence from Dead Lucy's case as well. And Nancy gets caught. She's about to escape when the alarm goes off. But George is outside. George came at the last minute to help save Nancy, so George breaks open the window. Nancy gives her the evidence. George runs away, and 2 seconds later, Nancy's arrested. I didn't think the timing on that worked, because if the police officers were that close to catching Nancy, then there's no way they didn't see George, right? So that, just a personal gripe, not that big a deal. We also get a bit of Nancy's father, Carson. I liked the scenes with Nancy's father in this episode more than the previous episode. He got into a fight with Mr. Hudson, and he also got into a big argument with Nancy, sort of at the end. Nancy's in jail, and he talks to her. He wants to be her lawyer, and they sort of clear the air about what happened with her mother's death, and, he was not cheating on his wife. At least I hope he's telling the truth here. No, he actually started a new relationship with Karen. I guess you would call it a rebound relationship after his wife died. And that makes sense to me. Doesn't make sense to Nancy. She still seems kind of upset about it, but she seems more accepting of her father. The thing she's curious about is that, bloody dress she found in the attic. And her dad comes up with a plausible explanation for it. Oh, it was just a Halloween prank. And they were, digging it up from the backyard because, there was something else that was valuable inside that coffin. And, I don't know, because at the end of the episode, Carson sets the dress on fire. And that's really suspicious that he's setting this evidence on fire in the middle of nowhere, right? I don't think Carson Drew's the culprit, mainly because, he's a good actor. We want to keep him around for the rest of the series. So I think we're going to blame Nancy's mother, to be honest. I think Nancy's mother is going to be responsible for the death, or some other relative we've never heard of. Like, Nancy's father casually mentions her, great-grandmother who we've never heard of before. So I think it could be Nancy's mother or some other person we don't see, some other Drew relative who will take the fall for killing Lucy. I said in the previous episode, Lucy died in my previous review, I thought Lucy died 200 years ago. Nope, she died 20 years ago. So her death is kind of fresh. So she died around the time Nancy was born. And if they're clever, this will work into the storyline. Like, Lucy's death has something to do with Nancy being born. Maybe that's the conclusion I would draw. Because it said on the box she was born. Lucy died in the year 2000, and Nancy is just out of high school. So she died around, 19 years ago, around the time Nancy would have been born. So overall, I'd say it's a good episode, a spooky episode. It seems like, we're actually setting up the mystery and taking our time here. I thought it was going to be a one-episode mystery, like Nancy's going to solve a mini-mystery. But Nancy's breaking into the morgue and getting arrested, that's actually pretty interesting too, It's just as good as Nancy solving an hour-long mystery. So, I'd say I liked it. Cool. See you guys next week.